Barack Obama had big part of 9/11.
Which part?
Not being around, always on vacation, never in the office.
Why do you think Barack Obama wasn't in the Oval Office on 9/11?
That I don't know. Would like to get to the bottom of that.
A huge fan of Trump, man. Want to see a better America. I want lower taxes. I want less tax on my Zins.
You have your Zins there. How much do those cost you?
Right now, where I live, these are $9 a can.
How much should they be?
Like $6-7.
The presidency is a man's job.
I have women are qualified to be president.
No. A female has more hormones. She could start a war in 10 seconds. If she has hot flashes, whatever, boom.
Haven't all wars been started by men?
Feel about J.D. Vance?
I don't know. I think he's a good guy, but I don't really know much about him. I think his wife might be an evil person, so that's interesting.
Really?
Yeah, she's...
Why? Why do you say that?
Because I think there's that adrenochrome connection with her. But
Really?
Today, the Oregon Department of Justice is leading a coalition of 12 states in filing a lawsuit challenging the legality of President Trump's tariffs. The lawsuit has been filed in the United States Court of International Trade and focuses on 4 executive orders that claim the power to set tariffs through an unprecedented misuse of emergency powers. These tariffs are unlawful, they're chaotic and harmful to the hardworking families and businesses that make our state thrive. And they are not just numbers on a page. They are real costs in all of our wallets, your workplace, and all of our future.
So, we all know, before even all this began, President Donald Trump was trying to say that China is taking a lot from America, is playing with actually Americans. And now, the Council of States, I think the senators are trying to challenge the legality of the Trump's tariff on court. He said there are about 12 states they are forming a coalitions and they are filing a court case, against Trump's executive orders. We all know back there when Trump was asked China is taking us for granted, and when asked is that China were gonna pay billions, and it reached a time where he actually agreed that it's not China that pays that tariff. It is the American who are the final consumer of that goods that pay for those tariffs.
So how many times have you heard Trump say that the Chinese will pay for the tariffs? The Chinese will pay the cost of the tariffs. Well, he just admitted that the cost of the tariffs gets added to the price of the product. It gets added to the price of the product. That means consumers pay. Way to go, stable genius.
So the end product, at the beginning, I think he didn't actually understand, or you just saying out of pressure, even when the trade secretary was being interrogated in the Senate, about all the legality of tariff. The guy was having a hard time explaining what all the tariffs all about. And we want to actually get to know what's the update on Trump's tariff. When Trump was there in the Vatican, on Pope's burial, the Chinese, they're back there humiliating him, actually, trying to show the world that this man is a liar. Is Trump really a liar,
据我了解，中美双方并没有就关税问题进行磋商或谈判，更谈不上达成协议。这场关税战是由美方发起的，中方的态度是一贯的。明确的，打奉陪到底，谈大门敞开。对话谈判必须是平等、尊重、互惠的。
The Trump administrations had imposed tariff of Chinese imports totaling to 145%, including a 125% rate on most goods and additional levies from prior actions. On April 9th, 2025, tariff on low-value imports from China were increased, with the ad valorem duty rising from 30% to 90%, and per postal item duties are jumping from 25% to 75%, which was to be effected in May, and 50 to 150%, which was to be effected in June 1. So some reports indicate that tariffs on specific Chinese goods could be as high as 245, and who is gonna pay for this 245? It's you, the American. So these measures aim to address trade imbalances and issues like fentanyl trafficking, with the exemptions for certain products like semiconductors, consumer tax considerations. We all know that it was push and pull to wait for who will blink first. And eventually, okay, according to the sources we have from the White House, it says that China is the one that caved in into the table and want negotiations. Let's see what China's response to all the Americans. So China retaliated by raising tariffs on US goods to 125 and from 84% on April 11, 2025, signaling this as its last tit-for-tat increase. Beijing has also implemented non-tariff measures, including export controls on rare earth minerals, antitrust probes into minerals, antitrust probes into US companies like DuPont and Google, and restrictions on American firms via unreliable entity list. China's Ministry of Finance called the further US tariff hikes meaningless and economically unfeasible, emphasizing that trade between the two nations could hold extremely. So we also many of the Chinese containers, arriving in USA empty. These are people who are ordered, imported things from China, but the containers came empty. Also, the Boeing being sent to China, the planes being returned back. Also, the US China rejecting US postals, I think something like that. And now the farmers went up in the flame at eye, like complaining all those that is happening in actually America, and it's affecting them. The soybeans farmers good farms produce were rotting back in their warehouses. China even looked for alternative sources of their produce, like soybeans. They went to Brazil, So I think Trump told us sometimes back that now China is on the table. They are trying to negotiate. So we want to see, is really there any negotiation between Trump's and China? So the tension remained high when conflicting reports on talk. Also on April 24, Trump claimed active discussion with China, but Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Guo Jiankui denied any tariffs negotiation, calling such reports as fake news. Trump later softened his tone, suggesting that tariffs on China could drop below 145, but not to zero. A contingent on substantial concession from Beijing. However, China insists on mutual respect and has shown reluctance to negotiate under pressure, with Xi Jinping publicly stating that there are no winners in a tariff war. the economic impact of these. So the tariff has triggered global impact of market volatility. You know, when the US stock market crashed, the worst crash in US stock market since June 2020. And US Treasury yield rising. The International Monetary Fund slashed growth forecast for both nations, citing trade disruptions. US consumers face an average tariff rate of 25.2, highest since 1909, potentially increasing household costs by 1,300 in 2025. China's economy, reliant on export, faces employment risk through its leadership, though its leadership appeared prepared to endure economic pain longer than US due to fewer domestic political pressure. Yeah, now I think what's the difference between the US war, trade war, and China's trade war is that US is having pressure from inside. The Americans, they are rising up, they're speaking out. The senators, the Republicans, even the Democrats, even the Republicans who are the Trumps are foot soldiers. They are also calling out, you know, because they're experiencing losses.
Americans did not think that they could turn into an authoritarian dictatorship, a fascist police state with a collapsing economy. Yet it's happening right now. And a lot of people, again, didn't vote. They didn't think to themselves that this could possibly happen. They thought it was just not within the realm of reality that Donald Trump could be reelected. Yet here we are, and we are only like 100 days into this at this point. And it's a catastrophe for the U.S. There's no doubt about it. And it's a catastrophe for the world, too, because so much innovation happens in the U.S. Manufacturing happens all over the world, but innovation, generally, a lot of it has happened in the U.S. That's going to move away. Of course, China is a super innovative country, and much of Europe is also very innovative. But we're watching the collapse of the U.S. economy. But worse than that, we're seeing a pattern of undermining democracy. A judge was arrested yesterday in the U.S., not just investigated, look, we're investigating you for this, not just, laying a charge, going through all of those very strict approval things that you would expect for a judge. No, they were just arrested, held in custody for bail. This is now set a precedent. And if you think that that can't happen in Canada, I'll tell you right now, it can. Much of what Poilievre talks about, he had denied for the longest time that he was a Trumpist, that he was Maga. But now that he's been declining in the polls, he's come out and he's gone full Maga in the last little while. He's talked about overriding the Charter of Rights. He's talked about deporting people the same way that the U.S. is doing it, without any proper procedure, just picking people up off the street, putting them on planes and deporting them. If you think that can't happen in Canada, it can. The Conservatives and the Republicans are the same thing. The American, the people who work on the campaigns in the U.S. for the Republican Party come to Canada when we have a federal election, even when we have a provincial election, and they work for the Conservatives. They go around the world working for each other. There's dirty money in it because Republicans and Conservatives feel that that's okay for them to cheat. They believe in cheating. The rest of us look at it and say this is wrong, but they can skirt the rules wherever they can to get by. Remember that Poilievre had to sign a declaration that he violated the rules at one point and had a consent agreement with Elections Canada. That was just one of other examples of things that he did. But these are people who have, again, dirty money coming in from out of country to try and influence our election, and they think that's okay. They think that's okay. So think about that, right? We have our general election is coming on Monday. We have an opportunity to have perhaps the best person in the world as our prime minister in Mark Carney. The guy's got a PhD from Oxford, bachelor's degree from Harvard, and is connected internationally to know what to do to protect our economy. He's dealt with two major crises in his life already, where he was brought in to be able to be the guy who dealt with it, and he was able to minimize the damage in those circumstances for Canada and the UK. We have an existential threat with the United States. The Maga people want to undermine Canada because they want to be taken over by the U.S. That would be a terrible catastrophe for Canada. Just think of the economic implications for you and your household. Your house will be worthless, okay? But among other things, it would just be a catastrophic circumstance for us, where we would lose much of what we think is important as Canadians, our healthcare, our education. They're undermining those things. They're ruining them in the States. But we have, public healthcare. People don't realize just how valuable that is. And our sense of compassion for one another that we have in Canada. But the Conservatives are looking to undermine our situation, to just, kneel at Trump's knee. And that is what Poilievre will do. And that will just damage our economy. They want to shrink our society. They want to shrink our economy. All he ever talks about is cuts. Okay, he doesn't want to grow out of anything. He doesn't want us to improve. He just wants to cut. The slash and burn. He read one book. Okay, he read one book. He may not even have read it. He knows about one book on economics, and that book says slash, cut. And that's the only thing he knows how to do. And that is just going to weaken Canada like it did under Harper, weaken Canada, take us from a good fiscal position to a weak fiscal position. This is our opportunity to not make the same mistake that the Americans made. So it is absolutely essential that you encourage your friends and family to get out and vote for Mark Carney, to get out and vote for the Liberals. We have had good management for the last 10 years. We got through the pandemic. We've had low unemployment. We've had a strong economy generally, although it's been tough after coming through the pandemic. We've had inflation has been an international issue and has been less in Canada than in many other locations. We have done okay in Canada, and despite all of these significant headwinds, and we will be so much better placed when we've got Mark Carney as Prime Minister, because he is an actual expert. He's not a guy who just read one book. He's a guy who knows exactly what he's doing. So think about it, having an actual expert. Who would you rather have perform surgery on you? Would you like to have somebody who's an expert heart surgeon, or would you like the guy who's got opinions on it? Okay? Pierre Poilievre has spent 20 years with opinions, and he's never gained any expertise in anything. He hasn't passed any legislation. He's accomplished nothing. He's built the system. He's been campaigning for 2 years. He's accomplished nothing. We need somebody who is accomplished. We have the opportunity to send a message to the world that in Canada, we recognize expertise. We recognize that smart people, come from Canada and can do the job. And so on Monday, you make sure you get out and you vote Liberal, because that is the greatest chance we have to defeat this negative view of Canada and to ensure that Canada is strong, sovereign, and stable in the future.
Secretary Besson said that you wouldn't drop tariffs on China unilaterally, that you would need to see some kind of movement. What do you want to see from China?
Well, I'm not going to drop them unless they give us something that's, substantial. Otherwise, I'm not going to drop them, but it'll all work out. Those things always work out.
What kind of movement do you consider substantial from China?
Well, free up China, let us go in and work China, because, frankly, that's what we wanted last time. We almost got it, and then they backed out of that deal. But we had it. To go into China and to sell our product, sell our wares. In other words, it's called to open China. That would be great. That would be a big win. But I'm not even sure I'm going to ask for it, because they don't want it open.
Right. Those are strong points, and he also okay, it's Canada, but also it's USA. And we all know, the federal judge arrested, we got the news of a 2-year, the Americans' kids who are being deported, even after the father tries to get an order barring that to be done. We all saying there are some FBI agents now going to search, to that house if they believe that it's hosting an alien immigrant. And you all know, since Trump came in, he has violated many of the constitutional order. Many of the constitution. America is generally in a constitutional crisis. But if I may ask, do these Democrats are having a genuine complaint towards Donald Trump, or they are complaining because their favorite candidate didn't win? Okay, from my point of view, I may say things, okay, like we all saw that the money that Doge is trying to bring back to the government is not helping somehow, all right? And it's one of the reasons I think Elon Musk is trying to step down from Doge.